Hello, friends. With another edition of the Think Tank Talk for the Center for Research and Security Studies. We have with us today Anton Bespalov. He is the program director for the Valdai Club. It's a think tank based in Moscow, and he's also an expert on international relations. So, welcome to Islamabad.
Thank you so much.
So, it's a pleasure to have you, and let's start with a very basic question. What is the situation in Russia these days? Particularly, it's now over 1.5 years that the conflict with the Ukraine started, and then Russia faced a lot of then sanctions from the West.
You're right. Russia really faced an unprecedented barrage of sanctions from the West. It's said the sanctions number thousands. It's the world record. No other country has ever experienced such a number of sanctions, which actually is not a correct term because Russia prefers to call them restrictive measures, as sanctions can only be introduced by the United Nations Security Council. So these are unilateral restrictive measures aimed at destroying the Russian economy. As we can see, over the past 2 years, this has not happened. The Russian economy has not been destroyed, it has not collapsed, and in many respects it has even been reinforced. So this is quite a puzzle for our partners in the West, or former partners, why it happened. And it turned out that most of the world refused to join into this sanctions war, refused to cut political and economic ties with Russia, and more, even though many countries did not articulate a pro-Russian position on this conflict, they refused to join the efforts to bring into a strategic defeat for Russia. Mm-hmm. So Russia has reoriented much of its trade to the countries of the global south, primarily in Asia. And the results of cutting the traditional ties with the West have not been as disastrous as they were expected to be.
So is one right when we say that the restrictive measures placed by the West basically provided a big fillip to the Russian exports, and then it gave way to new partnerships with countries like China and India, and now Russia is also trying to expand its relations westwards?
Yes, certainly. They did provide an impetus for Russia to reorient its trade, to restructure its trade relations, and new opportunities have been found. And importantly, these measures have shown to the rest of the world what can happen if you rely too much on the West. So the credibility of partnership with Western countries has been severely undermined. And we believe this is why many countries across the global south, countries in the Gulf, countries in South Asia, have begun to reassess their relations, including their economic relations with the West, just looking at what can happen when the West decides to confiscate your assets. It was kind of a game where the two sides recognize certain rules until the West decided to first freeze and then to confiscate Russia's money. And this can happen to any country. I think many countries around the world are realizing this.
So it turned out to be a big opportunity for Russia to have a second look at its relations, and then this is sort of a bonanza for Russia, would you say?
I wouldn't call it a bonanza. It was a situation which arose out of very negative conditions. But Russia and its partners have found creative ways of overcoming this situation. As you probably know, about 10 years ago, Russia launched a policy of so-called pivot to the east, which was originally aimed at reinforcing ties with China, but also other countries of Asia. And the past 2 years have created natural conditions for this policy to translate into something more tangible and more feasible.
So what future do you see now for the Ukraine conflict, with President Trump winning the presidential election? Do you hope, does Russia hope that somehow the arrival of Trump might help in de-escalating the situation?
Russia certainly doesn't view Trump as its ally in this conflict. Russia can only rely on itself, and I don't share the expectations that Trump will create some sort of magical solution to this conflict. The thing is that America is one of the main beneficiaries of the war. Its military-industrial complex, its strategic position within the Western community has been significantly reinforced, and Trump objectively has no reasons to want to end it all. So we don't expect any miracles. Russia relies on its armed forces, first of all, and I think that the situation will be sooner or later decided on the battlefield with the external factors such as the election of a new U.S. president, the changes in America's policy, and which are more likely than changes in the European policy, because the Europeans seem to be having more problems realizing the changing situation on the ground. So these are secondary factors. The primary factors are on the ground.
What do you see the future of BRICS, particularly led by Russia and China in the current circumstances? Do you hope it can really develop into a community of shared future for the countries that are contiguous to each other in this big continent?
The thing is that originally BRICS was a very loose grouping, and this was said to be its kind of negative feature, because people in the West are used to having more rigid structures and more stable institutions. So BRICS was originally a forum, a platform for dialogue, and suddenly it turned out that more and more nations want to join it. I think they find very objective advantages in being part of that grouping. I don't think it will ever evolve in an alliance, but actually its nature, its loose nature, its providing ability for countries to express their interests and communicate with each other is what it makes attractive for the countries of the world.
Okay. China has disproved that notion that was peddled a lot in the West, that the modernization progress is not possible without liberalization. But then we look at China, the way it has evolved, we look at Russia, the way it has survived all sorts of restrictive measures or sanctions. So do you think these are the models that other countries can also follow?
Well, I don't think these countries are willing to export their models, but they serve as an example, because indeed the notion that westernization, modernization were synonymous is kind of becoming obsolete. And China does a lot to promote its vision, and many countries find it attractive. Russia has demonstrated a remarkable ability to withstand pressure from the West, something which is very welcome for many countries around the world, because it was perceived as a given that if the West begins a full-scale war in all but name, you cannot resist. But Russia shows it can. So I think the Western type of modernization has been a very useful episode in world history, which has helped many countries achieve remarkable successes. But it's not the only one. I think the 21st century opens up new opportunities for many countries, for many nations, for their own national path of development. And Russia, China, and other countries, which are also can be seen as examples of this progress, can serve as useful examples.
Do you think, in your view, and also the view of other Russian experts, that whether China can lead the global South the way the United States has been leading the global North?
The peculiarity of the global South is that it doesn't have a leader, and it seems not to need one, because actually the way American leadership is exercised often boils down to other countries being its vassals, left without its own strategic choices. And this is not what countries of the global South expect. I think most nations across the global South want equal partnership, realizing the different potentials, the different roles that countries can play, but they don't want to be led. They want to co-develop, and I think this is the main stimulus that unites these countries.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. This was Anton Bespalov. We are ending this conversation with this positive note that basically development doesn't need predominance, the way we have seen of the United States, how it basically led the global north, and that the countries which are divided, which are unified under BRICS or under the global south, they are aspiring for a shared future based on co-development, peace and security. Thank you very much.